I want to bring in our next guest because he knows a lot about U.S.-China relations. He is with the Peterson Institute for International Economics. He's a senior fellow there. Nick Lardy joining us again. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
And as we're watching this opening ceremony take place between the two presidents, in your mind, what do you expect is going to come out from this visit?
Well, hopefully a better understanding of each other's point of view. I'm not expecting them to move the ball dramatically on any specific issue, but I do think there'll be a better understanding of each other's point of view. Obviously, we have different perspectives on human rights, a range of economic issues, and some of the strategic issues.
How would you characterize, Nick, the relationship that we are forming with China through President Obama and his leadership versus the prior presidents?
Well, I think we're in a bit of a correction. I think that the view of the administration currently is that the approach that they tried in the first couple of years was not so successful. The Chinese have not moved on a lot of the core issues, and so I think they're ratcheting up some of the pressure against the Chinese, I think particularly in the human rights area. This is most obvious in the new approach that's been taken by our Secretary of State.
Yeah, I was reading, Nick, in the New York Times, there was a quote from someone, Michael Green. He advised George W. Bush on Hu's last visit. And just to your point about human rights issue, he said, look, Hu's visit creates a situation where you've got a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, hosting a banquet for a leader who is imprisoning another Nobel Peace laureate. How awkward is that?
I think it is a telling comment, and I think President Obama did meet last week with several human rights activists, both Americans and Chinese, seeking their views on how we could advance on this issue. So I think the administration as a whole, led by the president, is taking a different view on this issue than they had in the first couple years of the administration.
Are the American CEOs going to make any headway in pressuring the Chinese to open up their markets?
I'd be very surprised if there's any specific commitment by the Chinese, but the body language could be positive. They've already fallen off a bit on their indigenous innovation initiative, which was announced more than a year ago. They're modifying it in response to external criticisms, not only from the United States, but from a lot of Europeans as well. So we could see some further modification of that going forward, maybe not at the actual time of the visit, but in the weeks and months following the visit.
Hey, Nick, it's Sara Eisen here in the newsroom. We've heard a lot about what the U.S. wants out of this visit. What does China want?
Well, they've had a number of things on their list for quite a few years. They would like a relaxation of export controls that limits their ability to buy products made in the United States. They think that's a big factor contributing to the imbalance in the trade relationship. The administration a year or so ago did announce a big review of its export control regime. It does require some congressional action, so I don't think we're going to see real progress on that, which is quite frankly a little bit unfortunate because clearly it would be in our interest to be able to increase our exports, and some of these restrictions we impose do limit the ability of U.S. firms to sell to China, or in some cases they have to get a license. It's a cumbersome process that the administration would like to streamline. So the faster we could move on that would help us and the Chinese, I think. They also...
Go ahead.
They're interested in a number of other issues. There's this issue called market economy status. They'd like to have market economy status given by the United States, but I think that's a very unlikely possibility.
And Nick, am I wrong on that interpretation, or what? I mean, he evoked, what it was like between the two countries 30 years ago, as you know, when they were on the cusp of really seeing a modern China as we know it today.
No, I think the remarks were excellent. They put things in historical perspective. That's particularly playing to a Chinese interest. I think the Chinese frequently think that Americans are just of the moment. We don't remember the history as well as they do, and I think that this was a very good review of how the relationship started and how far it has come.
Right. And right before the president was making his remarks, Nick, I'd asked you, what would the Chinese benchmark as a successful trip? What do you think that they want ultimately to get out of this?
Well, their benchmarks are very different from ours. I think the administration, for our part, is looking for progress on very specific issues. the Chinese are looking, first of all, to avoid any real mistakes, any embarrassments to President Hu. In the past, for example, there have been some Falun Gong demonstrators that have appeared at with Chinese leaders in the United States, or we make a mistake about which national anthem we're playing. So they're looking at this visit primarily in terms of how it will look on TV in China to the great masses of the Chinese who will watch this. And so their number one goal is to avoid any mistakes, any embarrassments.